Hello and welcome to this reveal video, which are the best kind, aren't they? Well, of course depends on what's being revealed. For the Trumpeter 1/48 scale Westland Whirlwind Mark I, I believe, which was kindly supplied by the KitMaker Network, www.kitmaker.net, check them out, or aeroscale.co.uk if you like your things with wings. Yes, see, you like these things with wings. What can we say about this little kit? It is a lovely little kit. I thoroughly enjoyed building it. It's like a chain reaction, isn't it? Excuse me. It was just the Postal Service launching yet another assault to try and murder the entire family. And Max, of course, stepping up to the plate, as he does every single day. The Whirlwind is done and, well, no, it's not done. Well, yes, it is done. It's as done as it needs to be for the purposes of this video. What has still to be done is the underside weathering, for want of a better term, at the rear of the fuselage. There appears to be what looks like more chipping, heavy chipping. Now, I have been reliably informed by someone who is very knowledgeable on all things aviation that the early Whirlwinds didn't use primer on the aluminium fuselage skin, which resulted in the heavy chipping that we can see on the photograph. And he believes that that is chipping on the underside and it would be bare metal that's showing through. It's just that on the photograph it looks very dark. Now, it's an old photograph, it's grainy, high contrast, it's probably been copied and processed and digitized so many times that it's quite difficult to tell. But it could just be that because it's on the underside and it's not getting direct light on it, that if there is any reflective quality in the aluminium, I mean, it looks quite shiny, or quite not necessarily shiny, but it looks brighter on the top surface. It could just be that because it's the ground is underneath, it looks a lot darker. I don't know, so I'm going to look into that further. But what can we say about this kit that hasn't already been said? Or, well, I suppose we're going to have to say it, we're just going to have to reiterate it, I suppose. It is a fantastic little kit and I highly recommend it. It would make, as I've said, a wonderful little weekend build. The part count is relatively small, so you're looking at an aeroplane shaped piece of styrene sitting on your workbench in fairly short order. It could probably go together quite easily in a weekend, and providing you don't do any scratch building like I did. I mean, if we're going to talk about this kit, unfortunately it's going to be its inaccuracies. I mean, the good points are obvious. I mean, it's a lovely looking little thing, it's an unusual little plane, it's a subject you don't see very often, but Trumpeter have got a few things wrong. There's no other way to put it. The omission of a gun sight, as I mentioned in the previous video, that's an odd one. I can't see how they could go through the whole design process and omit something so prominent in the cockpit. Seatbelt, fine, yeah, nobody gives you a seatbelt, so I added a photo etched seat harness. I also put a seat cushion on as well. I added a few throttle quadrant levers and things like that, but that's part of the course. But the gun sight did strike me as rather odd. There may be a problem with, well, I don't know if this is inaccurate or not, because of this being an early model, but the radio box behind the pilot's seat, we're just given one and it's level. It sits on a surface level with the fuselage, the outer skin of the fuselage, whereas it looks, from what I've been able to determine, they are recessed down inside the fuselage, and there's two boxes whereas you only get one, but it could be the differentiation between the early models and the later models, so I don't know about that, but I've just gone with this one anyway. The positioning of the antenna mast, as I mentioned, had to come from the sliding section of the canopy, not from the forward section of the fuselage in front of the cockpit. That was kind of tricky, I have to say, attaching that. I initially just glued flat surface to flat surface, which the minute I put any tension with the antenna wire, which also I don't know if it's meant to be there. Again, from that photograph I can't see any evidence of it, but it could just be because it's such a fine line, you know, fine thin line, that the quality of the photograph just doesn't show it. So I've added one anyway, but as soon as I put tension on it, it just snapped the antenna mast off. So what I had to do was actually drill into the mast, insert a very, very thin rod of metal, and then very, very carefully drill into the top of the canopy, being careful not to actually go all the way through, because as soon as you do that you'll get drill shavings and dust falling into the sealed cockpit, which would have been a nightmare if it all got stuck to the inside of the glass. So I just drilled about 3/4 of the way through and used that metal rod as a locating pin, which stopped it sliding. But again, as soon as I put any tension, because I use easy line from the antenna wire, as soon as I put any tension on it, it just pulled it over slightly. Which actually looks kind of cool and almost looks like it should be like that, but it is meant to be vertical, but I can live with it. But the main problem was the decals, the decal sheet that Trumpeter, and the colour callouts as well. And the main problem being the A1 decal on the side of the fuselage. Trumpeter's being very, very lemony yellow, where it's quite a rich yellow. So as you may remember, I was sourcing a Montex mask set, one of these beautiful vinyl die-cut masks, which I did. Should have done a little bit more research before I did, because the Whirlwind uses has a 30-inch A1 roundel on its fuselage, which I think is quite uncommon, because the Montex mask set came with every size but 30-inch. It came with 25, came with 35, and all the sizes thereafter. So that was a bit of a bugger, to say the least. I'm sitting there, oh great, I've just ordered this mask set and I can't use it. But actually I was able to utilise it quite sneakily, because the Type B wingtop roundel, the blue and the dull red, the A1 roundel itself is a yellow band, a blue band, a white band, and then the red circle in the middle, and the diameter of the circle and all the bands are the same. So all I had to do was take one, I think it was the 35-inch one I took, and just use the outer two bands as one segment and the inner two parts as another segment. So I was able to technically able to create a mask. There's a slight discrepancy in size by like 1 millimetre or something, but you'd never notice it. It looks about right actually. So I was able to create the Type B roundel, and on the underside the Type A roundel, which is just the blue, white and red. I think it was one of the, I can't remember what size, 49-inch one or something, and just omitted the outer band and used the 3 inner segments to create the red, white and blue. So I was actually able to use it after all. And the material that the Montex masks are made from is like a sable coloured plastic. Very low tack but superb stuff. Because there was some surplus, like where it says 35-inch mask against, you know, I was able to take the backing of that and cut it up into strips and used it to paint the fin flashes. And because it's kind of sort of translucent, you can see exactly where you're positioning. It's brilliant stuff. I wish they did just blank sheets of it. It would sell like mad. As for the the roundel itself on the fuselage, Extra Decal do a sheet of A1 roundels in all different sizes, including 2 30 inches. Everything else is 4 or more, but for the 30 inch you only get 2, so as I say, it must be an unusual size. So I ordered up a set of these, and the buggers were out of register, every single one. It was the white base that the decal's printed on, was just, everything was just slightly off of that, so there was a white crescent around one side. But you know, I thought to myself, you know what, okay, I've spent enough on this, both financially and time-wise, on this damn thing. The reason I haven't cut it myself is that I can't get anything small enough to do the smaller circles. That was all, basically. So I decided to use the decal, and then I used the compass cutter to cut a paper mask the size of the outside diameter, carefully placed it over it, positioned it right, and then just sprayed the undersurface colour, and it just got rid of the little crescent. So it looks fine. So ironically, the one roundel that I wanted to paint whilst use everything else as a decal was the one that I used as a decal and ended up painting everything else. Isn't that always the way? As for the fuselage lettering, Trumpeters are white, whereas it should actually be medium sea grey. So again, I use the Decal sheet as a template to cut my own masks, but sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. You've got to get, it's getting into the corners and making sure that one cut and one cut are perfect, because usually there's a tiny little bit there that when you pull it away you get a little fluffy rag bit, and it's just a nightmare. So I ended up just, because there was no curves, I just used tape and just masked them up myself and was able to create my own letters, and then spray them medium sea grey, so they look fine. I'm actually quite happy with them. I was quite surprised by how good they turned out. Obviously the underside is sky, I do believe that's correct. As for the spinners, on the photograph they do look paler than the undersurface colour. I've painted them sky, that may or may not be correct, I don't know, but yeah. Other than that, the weathering, obviously I used the UMP washes that had been decanted to get to the clay pigment that lies within them, to fade and discolour the camo scheme. And obviously the Charisma colour pencil, which was red hot by the time it was finished. It was just wonderful having this blank canvas to just go to town on, and just way chipping away like mad. As for the Starboard side, which we don't have any photographic reference material of, it was always going to be artistic license. I'm reasonably happy with it. I've been told it looks more realistic than the actual chipping, from the same aviation expert, so we'll go with it. The only other thing that could maybe stand to be upgraded, because they're so prominent, is the gun barrels. Now I've used the ones that Trumpeter supplied, which are basically just varying diameters of plastic rod. I did drill out the ends, the muzzles, so they do look like gun barrels. But Master, the Czech company that do these beautiful turned brass gun barrels, it's just a pair of machine guns and a pair of cannons, so I'm sure somewhere in the Master catalogue there will be the appropriate hardware for you to replace these, and because they have cooling holes on the barrels, the brass ones would probably look fantastic. They're actually quite intricate looking things, so yeah, that might, I mean these would actually pop off quite easily, so I might at some stage maybe do that. But, so yeah, fantastic little kit. Highly recommend it to modelers of all skill levels. If you're looking for something nice and easy, if you're a beginner, perfect kit. If you're a more experienced modeler who likes to tweak, it's a perfect little platform to do that with. Some scratch building opportunities, and if construction is not your thing but painting is, then this is the perfect kit for you, because there's so much to do on this one if you want to replicate it. As for this one, HEF, I don't know how accurate that one is. To me it looks like, if that one's more accurate because it's a later model, that Trumpeter have just based this one on that, because obviously things like the bomb racks are still fitted, the positioning of the antenna mast, so it looks like they've based that on this one, which will be correct in that regard. But their decals are still lemony, so you may want to change these, but if you know, that's entirely up to you. You're the modeler, not me. So there we go, one Trumpeter 1/48 scale Westland Whirlwind for your pleasure.